recently shared an episode of Gathering Gold about self-care, and you and I really focused on kind of external forces and obstacles that make self-care difficult for the most part, because I think that's really important to both of us to name that it's not just like a personal failing if you struggle with self-care. And we talked about self-care being like a very um individual experience. Like it's not a cookie cutter, someone just hands you a self-care plan and then you do it. So I would really love to just dive a little bit deeper into internal resistance around self-care, because
Mm-hmm.
for me, like there are few things I find more effortful than taking care of myself. It's just
Yes.
something that I experience a lot of resistance.
Mm.
I wonder if some of it is genetic, like some people are more prone to like depression or, to just having a harder time with it. Um, but I also think about whether for some of us, self care feels almost like another way of trying to control ourselves.
Mm.
And if we already feel controlled in some way, it feels like another controlling force.
Mm-hmm.
Those are some things bubbling in my head. And I would just love to hear your thoughts on resistance to self care.
Yes. I think resistance in general is so linked to control. So I'm really glad you're bringing up
Mm.
that piece, that especially if we felt controlled growing up or we feel controlled now, that there's some kind of inner teenager that
Mm.
tends to come out a lot around these conversations that just says, no, I don't want to have to do one more thing. I don't want to have to do anything that I don't feel like doing. Right. So, of course, we're just shooting ourselves in our own foot because we're like making this big hurrah about, I will not be controlled. Ha! But like, who suffers as a result of that?
Yeah.
Right. We're not winning anything. But there's some part of us, if there's like an inner adolescent that is at the helm of the ship, that kind of thinks she's winning. Mhm.
Mm.
Um, so I think it's a very important piece. It comes up often around people around journaling or around different ways of taking care of ourselves, that the resistance gets very loud. And resistance to being controlled, resistance to, I don't know, letting parents off the hook. Like if I really take good care of myself, it's somehow forgiving somebody for not taking care of me. I don't want to have to be the one to do it because they should have done it. And if I step in and I'm the one to do it now, then nobody else will ever do it for me. So there is like this child part and this teenager part that's still sometimes holding out for somebody else to do it, or sticking it to somebody else like, ha, you can't control me, when like, well, no one else is here anymore.
which is terrifying sometimes, right? When you realize that.
Yeah, that it's all on you.
Yeah.
That's the big responsibility of actually stepping into adulthood and recognizing, I'm the only one that can do it. I'm the only one that will do it. You can hold out for a rescue fantasy that somebody else is going to swoop in and start making you delicious homemade soup every night and getting you up and walking with you in the mornings. And like, that's a fantastic fantasy, but that's not going to happen.
Mm.
And when we hold out for that and we let the resistance and we let these younger parts take the reins, we suffer.
Mm. Wow. It's so fascinating to me, that kind of, yeah, like rebelling against ourselves, and who
Mm-hmm.
do we really hurt? Ourselves. But there's something, I think, familiar and comforting sometimes about our old patterns and habits, even if they're not really serving us, they're
Hmm?
familiar and maybe in the moment comfortable, right?
Yes. Whatever is familiar is what's comfortable. So even if it's not serving us, we're going to cling to what's familiar because it's comfortable. If we're stepping into the unfamiliar, it is by definition more uncomfortable. And yes, there are certain personality types and temperaments that cling to their comfort zone,
Mm.
their safe little warm nest, more than other people who are more, seem to be more raring and willing to go and like
Mm.
be uncomfortable somewhere and do something new and adventurous and uncomfortable. Right. So I think there is a genetic component.
Mm.
I think there is a temperament component. And I think knowing that can help us have self compassion. Right.
I also think that sometimes doing the thing that's not good for you is like exciting
Hmm.
in the moment
Mm,
somehow.
mm. Yes. And still kind of that rebellious teenager who's always
Hmm.
kind of pushing that boundary to do things that are not necessarily good for you.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's really helpful to name that as a part. When I say that to people, their eyes always kind of light up. It's like an aha moment of,
Yeah.
oh, you have a rebellious teenager in you that's kind of running the show. Right.
So, how do you give that rebellious teenager healthy expression while you learn to take care of yourself? Like for me, I've learned, okay, when I'm in avoidance mode, that's when I don't take care of myself. Because if I avoid the dentist, talking about the dentist again, then I don't find out I have the cavity. And then I just
Mm-hmm.
keep not flossing because it's like, oh, it's probably all fine. Or if,
Mm-hmm.
if you avoid looking at your bank account, then you don't, then you don't know.
Yes.
Um, so there's like an avoidance piece. And I think bringing your, as you say, like your inner parent or your loving adult to say, we're going to go to the dentist now. We're going to look at the bank account. We're going to do these things. Come with me. So you bring that parent in and you like strengthen those habits. But
Mm-hmm.
but can you give that teenager like healthy expression so that they don't start blasting their music really loud again and throwing a party at night?
Yes, but maybe that's part of giving the teenager healthy expression. Like maybe that is a way to
Mm.
what is the essence, the energy stream of what is trying to be expressed and extracting that and expressing that in a healthy way. That's going to be different for different people, right? But
Mm.
I'm really curious because you just talked about your process of going into avoidance
Mm.
versus showing up and taking yourself to the dentist
Mhm.
and caring for yourself in that way. And so I'm curious if you can share what helped you, what has helped you, and is helping you make those decisions when
Mm.
it's not necessarily the most natural choice.
I think some of it is when I feel like a natural consequence of not taking care of something.
Mm,
Over time, it's like, okay, this is reality. Like one time,
mm,
my therapist just said to me, like, okay, so the reality is this. What do you want to do?
yes.
And um, I think just small things like um, I often will think a task is really, it will feel very overwhelming to me and just like this
Mm-hmm.
big mass. Like I got behind on the laundry and like it's a never ending amount of laundry. But I remind myself like it's not never ending. It's
Mm,
finite. And
mm,
it's one load at a time. Like say I let 3 loads of laundry build up and I have to literally say to myself, it's not an unmanageable situation and often what happens is the shame and blame would come in of like
mm,
how could you do this, like responsible
mm,
people don't let their laundry build up, and
mm.
the criticism. And
Yes.
so also just depersonalizing it and going, okay, what is actually the task at hand? The
Mm-hmm.
task at hand is I do the laundry now. And it's like quieting the chattering voices that are like making it actually so much harder to just do what needs to be done.
Yes. So much bigger. And so I think, again, there are some temperaments and personality types that carry more overwhelm, go into overwhelm more. Maybe some of that is a download, like some kind of and ancestral intergenerational download of overwhelm. And so a task can become so much bigger in your mind and catastrophic than it actually is. And so that's such a practical skill to be able to break it down into what is the task actually, to be able to soothe the overwhelm prefrontal cortex coming in to say, no, it's actually a finite amount of laundry. Like it's not like Mount Vesuvius. It's not like a mountain of laundry.
Right.
It's,
I mean, you need to do it all like
it keeps happening.
continuously,
Yes.
but that big pile is not infinite.
Yes. So it's coming back to the moment. I get overwhelmed like that too when I think about I have to cook food for myself for the rest of my life.
Yes. Yes.
Like that need is never going to end
Mhm.
until I'm 107. Like I am going to have to keep cooking. Like
Yeah.
like my body requires actually a lot of food. Like you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't think that. But I actually require and like meals, like I'm not someone that can
Yep.
just like grab a celery and some peanut butter and like I'm good. No, I need
A
like
handful of almonds.
a handful of almonds and a bite of yogurt. And I'm like, good for breakfast. No,
No.
that is not my system. I have to actually make whole like bowls of food.
Same. I'm the same
And
way.
like, it's overwhelming. It's like,
Yes.
but then I come back to, okay, sometimes I really enjoy that. Sometimes I'm tired. It's not one way. Um, and the stage of life that I'm in, it feels more overwhelming because there's four of us in the
Yeah.
house. One day there's going to be two of us in the house. Not so far off, there's going to be three of us in the house. Um, and it's going to feel less overwhelming, you
Mhm.
know. It's going to be more eventually like, oh, I only have to feed myself. And as life opens up time and space wise, as children get older, and so it's just like, we don't know. We don't know 2 minutes from now, let alone like 5 years or 10 years. So to go into like, oh my gosh, the next 50 years, I have, how many meals is that? I should do a calculate. No, like not helpful. Not helpful to try to calculate the number of meals I'm going to have to prepare for myself.
Oh God,
So,
no.
well, God, no. Reining that back in and just coming back to right now. Right. And I think that it can feel that way for all the parts of self care. And I think that's
Mm.
where the longing can come in. Like, can't somebody just do this
Take
for
care of me.
me? Take care of me. This is too much. And then it comes back to, I think, the failure of the system piece because it is an awful lot on one
Yeah.
person. And I think when we're living in villages and communities, a lot of these tasks were shared. You know, we were more active anyway during the day. We were just moving our bodies. We were sharing meals. So there is that piece too. Like I don't think it's actually supposed to be this hard on one or
Mm.
two people.
Mm.
So it is a juicy topic though, right? Like
It is. I feel like it's an an
Inf
infinite
I know.
topic. I could
Yes.
just keep going. There's so much about it. Well, we have the whole Gathering Gold episode. We're
And the
also going to
bonus.
do a bonus episode about self
Yes.
care where we dig into a little more of our personal stories around self care. So,
Yes. Yes. So, to be continued.
to be continued. Thank you.